Hello, everybody. Welcome into the NBA front office show. It's draft day. Let's go. Vontae Mack, no matter what. I'm so fired up for the NBA draft. Here we go. I'm Trevor Lane, joined by Keith Smith and our guy, Bryce Simon. Guys, how are you doing? Are you as excited as I am?
Yeah, man, I'm fired up. It's draft day. We had a huge trade last night. We had one of our favorite. I want my picks back. Kind of trades. That was fun. We like maybe another one of those happens here. Yeah, man, let's go. This is fired up for this. I don't know that I'm going to be able to get in a viewing of draft day today. I may need to play it in the background while I do some work, but let's go.
I fell asleep on the couch while watching draft day last night.
Nice. I fell asleep in the recliner for about 2 hours between 3 and 5, and then was back at it. So yeah,
I've been on the combine, as you guys know. And Keith, I told my dad, I said, listen, Keith Smith said he would come out and drive combine, and we're always looking for helpers, Keith. So next year, this time, you fly out, we'll put you on the combine.
Oh, yeah, man.
Your flight to Kansas may cost more than we'd be able to pay you for your help, though.
No, I don't want to be paid. Driving around heavy machinery, you don't need to pay me. Come on. I just don't. I just can't be held liable when I run down a cow or something.
Oh, no.
We try to keep those fenced in and away from the wheat whenever we're cutting. Yes,
there
sir. Yes, sir.
Oh no, Keith behind the wheel of the combine. I think the draft combine you'd be just fine. The other kind of combine.
The other. It's funny. I had somebody say, "Hey, I heard Bryce somewhere talking about the combine. Is there another draft combine?" I was like, "No, he's talking about an actual combine. He's harvesting wheat right now. And that's not a euphemism for scouting unknown players. He's legit harvesting wheat."
Yes, it was. And then it was Sam asked me about harvesting corn. I was like, oh no, Sam, we aren't able to grow corn where we live. We have to just settle for wheat. And then that became a thing as well. So my countryside, my country living came out, and I appreciated Trevor sent the son-in-law gif, and I was like, okay, I didn't know if everybody had seen that movie or not, so I appreciated that. I love sending you guys my Kansas lifestyle just to let you in a little bit on what I do. So
I love it.
Oh yeah, of course.
All right, let's get into it.
Let's do the trade
with Mikal Bridges. Yeah, for sure. Let's do that.
So here's the deal, and this is a big one. Obviously, I mean this was a should we go live? Maybe we should go back live. We had just gone off the air, of course. Maybe we should go back live as this trade went down. We were both exhausted and said, we're going to need our strength for draft day. But the Knicks get Mikal Bridges. They also get a bright and shiny second-round pick. Yay.
Yeah, I love that. The idea of, nope, need that second rounder. No deal. Right. Can't get that. Yeah.
I really want to know, at what point in the negotiation did that second round pick wind up going to the Knicks? At what point was that the done deal moment where the Knicks were like, no, I don't think we can do that, and the Nets went, we'll throw in a second deal. Let's go, get it done.
You know what that was? That was David goddamn Putney, just because they felt like it.
Just because I feel like it. I want Mikal Bridges and I want a second round pick just because I feel like it. Yep. Pancake eating MFer. We're making a bunch of terrible draft day references. A good, bad movie. The Nets get Bojan Bogdanovic, and then they get 4 unprotected firsts. This is a Gobert level deal. 4 unprotected first, an unprotected pick swap, top 4 protected 2025 first round pick from the Bucks, and a second 2025 second. So a lot of picks going around. Before we get to the Nets, guys, what do we think about the Knicks clearly going all in, getting Mikal Bridges, the Villanova crew? This is a big and bold move for New York.
Without a doubt. Couple things here. We know this is not a trade that is getting done until after the draft because the Knicks traded a 2031 pick. That pick is not tradable yet. That pick will become tradable after the draft. That's when they'll do that. So we know this trade will not get done immediately. Couple other things from the Knicks side. They are taking back as currently constructed. And I'm probably going to repeat that phrase a couple times here because it's extremely important. As reported, the Knicks are taking back more money than they are sending out. None of the picks have any value as far as salary matching goes in trade rules. Those are all zeros. They're obviously highly valuable in real terms, but salary matching, they're all zeros. So the Knicks are taking back Mikal Bridges for Bojan Bogdanovic. Bridges makes more money than Bogdanovic does. So right now, the Knicks would be hard capped at the first apron. I know some questions have been, I thought it was the second apron. Trust me, it is at the first apron. When you take back more than 100% of salary, you are hard capped at the first apron. So that means they're going to have some stuff to work around. Now, can they tweak this? Could they send another salary out to avoid that? And then they would get hard capped at the second apron because that would mean they're aggregating salaries. Absolutely, they could. You could tweak a trade right up until it's official with this. But as reported, they're going to be hard capped at the first apron. Doesn't mean they can't re-sign OG Anunoby. Just means they're in a little bit of a crunch there to get that done. If they are locked in at that first apron, it'll be Anunoby or Isaiah Hartenstein. Probably not both as it stands right now. The last question I'm going to point out with this is a lot of people have said, well, can't they throw in Jaquan Jeffries, pick up his option, put in Mamadi Diakite, maybe put in Jericho Sims. They cannot. You are no longer allowed in the offseason to aggregate multiple minimum contracts together in the same trade. The reason for that is the NBA doesn't want teams stacking 10 minimums together and trading for a $20 million player. So what that means is they're not allowed to do that. So in that situation, Sims, even though he signed using part of the mid-level exception, he still counts as a minimum salary player because he makes the minimum. So that's where this all kind of ties in, gets very complicated, and it's a little more difficult than just, hey, throw a couple guys on top, and that changes where the hard cap structure would land. That's not something they're going to be able to do as currently set up.
And Keith, that restriction exists for all teams and not just tier 1 or tier 2 apron teams in terms of stacking those minimums?
Correct. Yeah, that's just a new rule. Now, you can do that starting on December 15th of a given season. So going into trade season, December 15th through the trade deadline, they just don't want teams in the offseason stacking up a bunch of minimum contracts. Yeah, they trigger the second apron, but that's not how they want it done. The league and the Players Association doesn't want a whole bunch of guys on minimums being loaded up together to go get with these people. Somebody asked in the chat how much a Bojan's salary is going to get guaranteed. All of it. It'll all get guaranteed. He will be there. And then the Nets will either keep him or the Nets will flip him in a subsequent trade down the line.
I would be shocked if this doesn't turn into like a 3-team trade so that the Knicks can ultimately avoid that hard cap at the first tier apron. I do think this is something that can, well, I guess I shouldn't say shocked, but I would think that's going to be a goal for the Knicks because, again, as you said, this trade isn't getting executed right now. So I could see where they're going to try to do something to try to avoid that hard cap at the first tier and make themselves a second tier. There's just a decent amount more wiggle room. You're talking about like 10, 11 million bucks in wiggle room if you can become a first tier apron team as opposed to a hard cap at that first tier apron.
Yeah, huge. Now, if they move Julius Randle in another deal, let's say to Bryce, I know they're not your team, but you cover them. But if they moved him to the Detroit Pistons and didn't take anything back, now you've created all the wiggle room you need under the first or second apron. He'll be able to do that. So we'll see what that looks like. I think I will say this trade was done, and it was reported almost immediately after by all the Knicks people who are connected with the team. They did this trade to keep OG Anunoby in the fold, 100%. That's going to happen. It's going to be the Isaiah Hartenstein piece that becomes the bigger question. Can you also find enough wiggle room to keep him in the mix as well?
Bryce, how did you feel about this trade when it broke from the Knicks side of things? Do you like this move for them?
Yeah, so my initial reaction, we were actually live over on Game Theory trying to do a mock draft, and then all of a sudden we get this, and we got detoured for 30 minutes. My initial reaction was overpay. That was my first thought, that I like Mikal Bridges a lot. So that was just in terms of the value, what they gave up for unprotected. And I realize the Bucks are going to be good, but still, it's 5 first-round picks, pick swap, all of that. I slept on it. This morning I woke up, and just in terms of Mikal Bridges on the Knicks, I like what this team is building, where they're going, how you have to try to beat the current NBA champion Boston Celtics. You got to have as many of these wing defenders as you can to try to match up with them. And so as long as OG stays in the fold, obviously, if that doesn't happen, you talk about value of all sorts of things not being great. I like how they put this roster together. I would like it more if they were able to keep this big man rotation intact. I like the Mitch Rob, Isaiah Hartenstein combination at center. I'm a little less intrigued if one of those guys is gone, or if you have to move Randall, depending on what the return is. And that makes their draft tonight really interesting as well. I found it interesting, Keith, Trevor, I found it interesting they kept both of those picks from this year and didn't include one of those, because they still could have traded 2025. Stepien wouldn't come into play if they only traded one of them. Correct. And it's going to happen after anyway. So I was a little surprised they didn't include one of those. So it makes me think they have plans for those two picks.
Yeah, that's where I went immediately, Bryce, with that was I think they've got maybe something lined up with one of those two picks, maybe even both of them that we just haven't seen. This is why we always caution on this show. We react live to what we know at the time, but we always know there could be more to come that we're not seeing in these situations. So I know I broke down all the cap stuff and never really answered your question about how I feel about the trade itself. Basketball wise, I get why the Knicks did it for all the reasons Bryce laid out. I hate the value. You just took yourself out of the running for whoever the next big guy to come available is. We've heard for 2 years now, if Joel Embiid sours on the Sixers, that the Knicks would want him. They can't get him now. You have no real way to get there. You have no tradable assets. You're now into a spot where the Nets control your draft. Yes, you have the picks in the middle years, but you can't do anything with those. You could trade them as swaps, like the Suns ended up ultimately doing this past year. And I know we're going to get into some Suns stuff here in a minute. But this is, I mean, you put everything you had into Mikal Bridges. I think Mikal Bridges is a really good player. I've been saying for Trevor, feels like since the trade deadline, Mikal Bridges is your third best player, you're probably a pretty good team. If he's your fourth best player, you're probably a really good team. If he's your second best player, which we'll see, he might be with the Knicks right now. I don't know. That feels a little more shaky to me with that. He's also not really extendable because his contract number is so low going into next year. So you're going to run into the exact same thing that you're running into a Jalen Brunson, where you can't really extend them off that number. But we'll see what this looks like, for them. For right now, I'm cautiously optimistic, but I want to see the full picture come together before I really get too one way or another on this trade.
I think that. Go ahead, Bryce.
Go ahead. I was just
going to say, I thought Bryce made a good point with the whole Isaiah Hartenstein piece. If that's the casualty of this, that does hurt the Knicks to some degree. If Isaiah Hartenstein is now on the way out, they're going to keep OG Anunoby. I don't think they can keep both.
I was just going to say, real quick, as a coach, there's part of me, just from a coaching perspective, that likes the idea of the chemistry they're building and the continuity and all of that. I guess continuity is probably not the right word. I guess it is, because they all played at Villanova together. There's a little bit of roster turnover, so that's not the right word. But just them valuing these guys playing together, building with a vision of Brunson's our dude, and then we're going to surround him with all these other guys. But to Trevor, that's why I want Hartenstein and Mitch Rob to stay, is because I think they're a part of that, and losing one of them kind of changes the other. The other thing I'll say, Keith, is don't those Pistons and Wizards picks, even though they have protections, does that give New York a little bit of flexibility, not to go get a Joel Embiid, but potentially go make another move of some caliber? Because, or with the protections on those, does it still make it pretty complicated?
Yeah, it does. The challenge is those picks have such heavy protections. That's been the value issue all along for those draft picks for the Knicks, where the Knicks they've tried to move those in other deals, and teams have been very lukewarm on them, because they're like, by the time I finally get these, they're either not going to be good picks or they're going to turn into seconds with that. So that's a little bit that's the Trevor, do you want me to tee you up for the all first round picks are not created equal?
Yes, please.
Here, because that's exactly what that is. Those ones are not they're first round picks, but they don't look as good as even an unprotected Knicks pick in 2029 does. I want to pull over a comment real quick if I can. Unpopular opinion, this is from our world. Run Julius Randle at center. Start Hart next to OG, McHale, and Brunson. Best team in the East. Hard disagree. You don't have anywhere near enough rim protection in that lineup. Not that Randall's a bad player, but Tibbs has never played him at center. I don't think he's just going to start now because this is what the roster is. And I think you would start DiVincenzo in that lineup because you need the floor spacing there.
Have we forgot what Dante DiVincenzo just did this last season? I see everybody talking about Josh Hart. Oh, like we got to keep Josh Hart in the starting lineup. If I'm Dante, I'm like, I just was one of the best 3-point shooters in the NBA. I just had a career year shooting over 40% from three on crazy volume, would step up and take even more volume when they needed him to. I feel like Dante's the lost man in all of this conversation. And the other thing, they have great depth, guys. Does Tibbs even want to use that depth? That's my other thing. Or is he going to be willing to play these rookies they may draft tonight at 24 and 25? So I like the idea of this. I just still want to see how it all plays out. It's very interesting to me.
Yeah, completely agree. We want to move to the Nets side?
Yeah, but before I do, I want to give a shout out. There was a tweet, and I don't recall who sent it out, but they made the point that Mikal Bridges has been an Iron Man. He's played in X number of minutes for so many games. He doesn't miss any time. And Tom Thibodeau is hell-bent on testing the limits of the human body, and he's going to put that to the test. I'm expecting Mikal Bridges to average 48 minutes a night for the season. He's going to pull the Wilt Chamberlain.
Wilt's record is in jeopardy, right?
That's right. Every single minute, every single game, plus overtime, he's going to do it. All right, let's get to the Nets side, guys. I'm just going to throw it to you, and let me just say this. I'm so proud of the Nets. They picked the direction. I didn't think they were going to do this, and they made this move, and oh my gosh, what a haul. I think Nets fans should be extremely excited by what their team just did.
Completely agree. You gave yourself making the draft day reference again, but I want this team's future back. Like you did it. Like you got your future back again here with this and the subsequent move, which we'll get into in a moment here. So this is huge. You've got now draft capital going out. You cleared Bridges off the books, good player, but now he comes off. You were in a spot where I very conservatively, because we don't know, they've got a lot more to play out here. Potentially 80-90 million in cap space next summer to play with if you're the Nets. Everybody made the joke they should sign KD and Kyrie. But, hey, last time I don't know that that's really where Sean Marks' heart was going. I think he kind of in a lot of ways would have rather keep building the way I was building. They let him just do his thing. I think the Nets are in great shape here moving forward with all this. This year's probably going to stink. They're probably going to be awful. But what a good year to be terrible with all the guys who are coming in the 2025 draft class. And now you have multiple bites at that apple because you've got your own pick back from the subsequent trade with the Rockets. You have an extra pick from the Knicks, and you have the Bucks pick. Let's say the Knicks or the Bucks go bust. One of those teams goes belly up and your own pick, you're going to be bad. You could be coming away with two or maybe even three long-term franchise type players out of this next draft. It's very, very early in the process. Bryce, I'm sure you're ahead of me on it. It feels like we have probably minimum, I think, 10 guys who could be the top pick in this draft in next year's draft class. Is roughly where I feel like that draft class looks absolutely loaded. So yeah, I mean, and somebody we'll pull it over here. The super chat, low key Nets getting Boyan is a great tanking maneuver since he can't keep anyone in front of him and he makes bad decisions down the stretch. I don't know about the bad decisions down the stretch part. I think that's been a little overblown, but yeah, he's not a great defender. He'll give him some points. My guess is he won't be there by the trade deadline. He'll be traded off to the next team that needs a little bit of bench scoring. But yeah, I mean, let's see what they do with Dorian Finney-Smith, Dennis Schroeder. I mean, you could basically bring this thing all the way down to like Cam Johnson, and Cam Johnson's deal is not immovable. So yeah, I mean, they did this team. I think we're just getting started here with this Nets team.
The big winner for the Nets guys is Cam Thomas, because that dude is going to get so many buckets this season. I said last night that I don't play NBA fantasy basketball or whatever, but if you do, I would be buying Cam Thomas stock right now because he may lead the league in scoring next year. And obviously, I'm joking here in terms of that.
I
he'll
don't
lead the
think
league in
that's
field
that
goal
much of a
attempts.
joke.
Field goal attempts for sure. And my guy, Day'Ron Sharp, may lead the league in offensive rebounds off the games that he isn't on and is able to go grab a bunch of those. So I think what's important, I know we're about to break it down. This is a home run for Brooklyn either way, right? With the return. I want to get your guys' thoughts on who the Knicks were bidding against as well, because some of the reporting that Mikal had said he wanted to go to New York and would kind of hold it hostage if he didn't. It made me wonder why New York had to go to this place. But I love this even more because Brooklyn shorted themselves instead of shorting the Phoenix Suns, and were able to make this the secondary trade with Houston to get their picks back and sold off the Suns picks. And so now they can, quote unquote, tank these next 2 years. That makes this even more of a home run for me if I'm a Brooklyn fan in the Brooklyn front office.
Yeah, I'm with you on that. I think they did really well. As far as who the Knicks were bidding against, there was some reporting last night that Utah was maybe going to chase Mikal Bridges. Houston was back in on Mikal Bridges, and it sounded like the Nets had made the decision yesterday, we're going to trade him. And then it became, where are we going now that we've made that decision? And that ultimately the Knicks said, all right, we want him. What is it going to take? And here we are, 6 draft picks essentially later. They've got him. So yeah, I mean, absolutely, huge thing. Somebody asked in the chat here, I'll pull it up. Mahalo Stojanovic says, can New York renegotiate Boyan's contract to give him more money? No, you can't. Not you can only renegotiate and extend contracts, and the Knicks would need cap space to do that, and they don't have cap space. So that's not a thing that's going to happen. So he's going to be going off at 19 million, or if this gets done this year, 20 million, but it's still they're still going to be facing a hard cap one way or the other.
Yeah, this is to me, when I look at this Nets roster now, I think obviously they're not done. Esham said predicting lots of trades over the next 48 hours. I think we're going to see more trades from the Nets. They now can become, using that Ben Simmons expiring contract, a dumping ground for salary for teams. Teams can send them even more assets in that situation. You've got other guys that'll have some value. Dorian Finney-Smith was a guy that a number of teams pursued at the trade deadline. Wouldn't surprise me if they moved on from him. They've got options here. And so I think this Nets team is going to fully tear it down. And I guess let's just get into it. The real brilliance here, as Bryce mentioned, it was getting their own pick back. And in addition to how good this deal is, I think, for the Nets, they get their own picks back from the Rockets. They made that subsequent swap. And it's the conjunction of those two things, not just making the trade with Mikal Bridges, the trade we've all been saying they should make. They got somebody to pay their price. They got the deal done, but getting their own pick back, it's such a big deal when you're going to tank, you're going to bottom out, that you have control of your own draft capital. So that was a massive move and so important for their future. And again, I mean, the Nets, we had somebody, Keith, was it day before yesterday?
It was last night.
A Nets fan? Was it last night?
Yeah.
God, it's all blurring together at this point. Yeah, telling us how terrible the Nets are and how much
our guy,
how disappointed. That's right.
Rock Official, who's always checking in on the show, whether live or in the comments on the show over on YouTube, basically came in and said, life sucks as a Nets fan. I'm ready to quit. And like, I don't see him here yet today. So all I can assume is maybe he's, delirious right now with happiness. I hope he's, maybe he's had a couple morning beers here already. He's cranking through his day, celebration time for him with this. But yeah, so let's get into that trade now with the Rockets. What the Nets get in that trade, they get back their 2026 pick, and the swap rights in 2025 are now canceled out. So effectively, they got back their 2025 pick and their 2026 pick. What they sent Houston is the 2025 swap that they had with the Suns. So it's the lesser of Rockets or Thunder for Suns. That goes to Houston. The 2027 pick straight up from Phoenix goes to Houston. And then in 2029, a first-round pick, which is the more favorable of Dallas and Phoenix, and a 2029 swap, which is the less favorable of Dallas or Phoenix. So effectively, they're getting Dallas and Phoenix's picks, or the Nets picks work in that as well in 2029. But in the next 2 years, the Nets now have control of their own draft picks back, which is absolutely huge in this case. there. That's how that's going to come together. That is absolutely massive for them with that.
And there's reporting that from the Rockets side, their incentive here was not just betting against the Suns by getting the Suns 2027 first and saying, hey, what's Kevin Durant going to be in 2027? And will Bradley Beal, where's he going to be at? All of that. But it's also, there's reporting that the Rockets specifically wanted the Suns picks so that they could offer the same kind of a deal to the Suns. Hey, you want your own pick back? Let's talk about a Kevin Durant trade, or maybe a few years down the road, let's talk about a Devin Booker trade if you want your own pick back if Phoenix decides to pivot. So they saw essentially what the Nets were doing and saying, hey, we need our pick back so we can tank and we can rebuild this team. They're predicting that the Suns could be in a similar situation a few years down the road, and they'll be standing there holding the Suns pick and saying, fork over Devin Booker. Interesting strategy from the Rockets part in all
Durant.
of this.
Yeah.
Or Kevin Durant, yes.
When he tweeted out to Kevin Durant, I think I was texting with you at the time, and I was like, what the hell is happening? Like, I don't even understand where we are. Like what is going on right now? Also, I will say, then he followed it up with or Devin Booker, and then I tweeted a couple friends, and I'm like, and poor Bradley Beal's like, and me? Like, where's my tweet? Like, do I get a tweet too? But yeah, I mean, all indications are the Houston Rockets are trying to go for it right now. They're trying to gear up and add a big time player right now. There's a lot of situation out there or reporting rather, I should say. Brian Windhorst had this morning on the morning ESPN shows. The Rockets at 3 become the most interesting team in the draft because if they trade that pick, or one of the things he put out there is, what if they just draft Donovan Clingan? Could Alperen Sengun then be offered up in a trade along with some of their picks back to the Suns as kind of the headline player piece for Kevin Durant? Everybody said the Suns have no interest in discussing a Devin Booker trade. Then Stephen A. Smith, and I know a lot of people have certain feelings about him, but he then kind of doubled down on Wendy's reporting with he saying the Suns want out of Kevin Durant business. Like they're done. They're ready to go a different direction. So I have no idea what's going to happen, but this is going to be absolutely, bonkers stuff to follow right up until the Rockets are on the clock. And the Rockets, as Bryce, I'm sure you and Sam covered last night, they're like prime trade position even without this other stuff because teams are trying to get up to that spot to maybe draft Donovan Clingan.
Yeah, as somebody that covers the Pistons, I'm hoping Clingan falls to 5 because I would like to see the Pistons trade back to whether it's 9 or, Memphis is the team that's talked about. Houston seems like the team that could really get in the way of that. And that's, of course, assuming Clingan doesn't go number 1. And I don't think we're ready to get into draft stuff now, but for anybody who's not kind of caught up on this, it sounds like Sarr is not going to go 1, which means I would assume definitely goes 2 to the Wizards. So this would be Risache 1, and then Clingan is there at 3. And now I think all hell breaks loose if that happens. Do you guys like what Houston did here? Because my initial reaction was I did not like it because you traded up shorting the Nets, who are going to be bad. They're going to be bad for the next 2 years. And I do think that shorting the Suns in 2027 makes a lot of sense, but it is a little bit less of a guarantee. So they got a little bit extra, so I understand it a little bit more than I did initially. Do you like the just process of this, or is it just specifically because they may be dealing with the Suns and it would be their own assets that they could be moving back to them?
I think it's a gamble. It's a bit like, who knows like you said, who knows where the Suns are at in a few years. If you're really counting on, hey, the Suns are going to be in trouble in a couple of years and they're going to want their own pick back and we're going to be able to swoop in and take advantage of that, who knows what happens? I mean, look, crazy things. We had a second round pick become a 3-time MVP. Like, you never know what's going to happen in this league. So if that is the main selling point from the Rocket side of things, I think it is a bit of a gamble for them. I tend to agree with you, Bryce. I would prefer to have the more sure thing in that the Nets are going to be taking. Now, was this deal something the Nets had to have in order to make the Mikal Bridges trade? Did the Nets put out there like, hey, we're not, unless we do this, then we're not going to make this move? I would think they should probably still do that trade, but maybe it was a prerequisite or something like that. which then throws into question how bad are the Nets really going to be if they continue down this path, or at least the Nets could threaten that. But yeah, I tend to agree with you. If I'm the Rockets, I'd rather have the Nets pick than the Suns pick, but this could pay off big time for Houston if things break the way they think they're going to.
All right, front office fans, it's pretty rare, but you're getting it. Your two dads here are going to disagree on the show.
Uh-oh.
I love this move for Houston. I think this is great. Whether they turn this into Kevin Durant or Devin Booker or anything with the Suns, they do not need more young players on this team. They have more than enough young guys as it is right now. I know you could turn around and trade those Nets picks. You could do a lot of things with them. And I also 100% believe Brooklyn doesn't necessarily make the Bridges trade without this trade also being already factored into things. I know the reporting on it was Bridges trade first, then this reporting came out, but I got to believe these were all being done in conjunction with each other. So I think for the Nets, they know they're bottoming out, so they get their picks back. But for Houston, you don't really need more young players to add to this team. All accounts have been all summer long. Part of the deal is we're trying to trade the third pick to get more vets in here to try to win now. Now what you've done is you've reloaded when some of those young players will have moved on or some of the vets you signed will have aged out. Now you can reload via the Suns picks if you don't turn around and do that load up right now. There's an argument. I've seen a lot of Rockets fans saying, don't trade everything right now. Don't do that. Like, keep what we have, build the way we've been building. We don't want to trade for Kevin Durant at the moment. But if they do, fine, you're going to jump yourself way up in the standings. But for down the line, now you have assets that I think are in a lot of ways probably better than maybe some of the ones you gave up. Fully understanding you may have just given up the Cooper Flag pick. Who knows? We'll see. But and if you did, that's going to look really bad in retrospect. But here we are.
And they acquired one extra draft pick or two?
Two.
So that's where it balanced out more for me. Whenever it seemed like it was 1-to-1, I was like, I would rather still just short the Nets over shorting the Suns, completely understanding the Suns may be really bad. When it came around and I finally understood all of it the way I think I should be, them getting a little bit of extra assets was kind of the icing on top. That's what I wanted to hear was, okay, they got a little bit extra. It wasn't all 1-for-1. So I'm probably a little bit more in the middle. I still like the sure thing. I don't love risk as much, and just knowing the Nets are going to be bad makes me feel a little bit better. But I see both sides of it for sure.
I think the most important thing out of all of this is
Fire.
Yeah,
the Kevin Cannon.
Yes! The Kevin Cannon is back.
It lives.
I thought it was gone forever, and now we get to go back to the Kevin Cannon. I love it. Of all
Kevin
the
Durant trade rumors. Let's go.
It's right there. That's right up near the top. I love it. All of our silliness. I think Dames of Our Lives is gone. That one's never coming back. But the Kevin Cannon lives. The Kevin Cannon lives. The Simmons Sirens walked so the Kevin Cannon could run. All right. Do we want to do some draft stuff? Let's get Bryce into his comfort zone. Unless, Bryce, you want to do a deep dive breakdown on Mohamedou Gay, two-way waiver from the Toronto Raptors. We could spend probably 15, 20 minutes on that and completely kill the show. But let's talk draft real quick. So you mentioned it. At the top, Atlanta. What's the latest going on there with the Hawks?
Yeah, my understanding is this is a Ricochet or Klingon situation right now. Alex Sarr, not as much, whether that's the Hawks not loving Sarr, if that's Sarr and his representation not loving the Hawks. We all know these things happen behind the scenes, and it seems like he wants to, or his representation wants him to be in Washington. Makes a lot of sense. My guess would be the only way we see Alex Sarr go number one is if there's a late trade, a late push for somebody to trade up to one. I don't know who that would be. So I think it's going to be Ricochet or Klingon. My vibe right now, as we sit, 6-7 hours from the draft, is we'll see Zachary Risacher go number 1 to the Hawks, Alex Sarr number 2 to the Wizards. And then, as we mentioned a little bit ago, then things get really fun with the Rockets at 3, the Spurs, the Pistons, and so forth.
All right, perfect. So then we get the then we move into the Rockets. We already talked a little bit about that, so we don't want to spend a ton of time there. We're not going to attempt to do any kind of real mock draft here, but Rockets, that's where we could really start to see, I think, a lot of the trade range going on with different stuff. So let's move into then. Let's talk about the kind of after Sarr and Risacher. I think we're all probably thinking those are going to be the first 2 guys off the board, most likely. Who are the next, let's say, 3 players for you that you think will come off the board? Not necessarily your highest rated guys, but the next 3 guys you think come off the board.
I feel like the betting money would go on Klingon, Shepard, and Castle. There's a little bit of team specificity to that. I think Shepard, especially if the Rockets stay at 3, what I'm intrigued by, guys, is if the Rockets trade out of 3, whoever trades in there, is it going to be for Reed Shepard? If it's, I would assume it's probably for Donovan Klingon. If Klingon goes 3, then where does Shepard end up? Does San Antonio like him? Do the Pistons end up liking him and putting him in their backcourt? And it seems like Steph Castle at 4 to the Spurs is something that's making a lot of sense right now. So I feel like those are the 3 names that I would be most comfortable saying, hey, if we have 5 guys off the board after Sarr and Risacher, Klingon, Shepard, Castle, some other Cody Williams is picking up a lot of steam here. It seems like I don't think I see Connect jumping in there. Topic has fallen down. I think Ron Holland is actually more of a faller than a riser in general. Yeah, I think it's those 3 names are the ones I'd be most comfortable with at this point.
You worried about Castle's shooting
100%
for the Spurs?
Yeah,
for the Spurs especially.
Yeah, I mean, not as much for them. Just in general, as a prospect, I don't think we talk about Castle's lack of shooting enough. It was a question coming out of high school. It was something that was a concern at Connecticut. We saw him turn down shots. We saw teams refuse to guard him at all. Like they gave him what we see in NBA playoffs treatment. We saw it in the NCAA tournament. Now, by all accounts, the intel's amazing, a hard worker. He can really guard at the point of the attack. Great, like build, strong, all of that. I also don't think he's a point guard. For anybody who heard those quotes, I don't think he's a primary initiator. So for San Antonio, he's an interesting fit. I think what they do at combining those 2 picks will be interesting also. It just seems like that's where there's a lot of steam right now as him at number 4.
It does seem to have died down a little bit with the whole idea of the 4th and 8th pick to trade up to 1.
Yeah.
That was the thing about, I would say it was at the end of last week that was gaining some steam. That does seem to have kind of gone away. I really think Atlanta is in a spot, even though this is not a Wembanyama or a Zion draft or an AD draft. I think Atlanta is in a spot where you're going to have to, they'd have to put in enough more stuff to get them off that 1 pick that then it doesn't make sense for the Spurs. Now it's tilted too far the other direction and they get off that. Trevor, you look like you had a question.
Oh, no, I didn't. I was just going to say that when I'm looking at this class, you've got that 4 and 8 for 1 pick or potential swap. Is this even a draft class where you'd want to do something like that if you're San Antonio?
I like the idea of calling this draft at the top. It is bad at the top in terms of there's no star. I just like to call it a flat draft at the top. I have a very big tier at the top of this draft. And so what happens is people are going to look at Zachary Reese. I feel really bad for Zachary Risacher because people are going to say, that's not a number 1 pick. He doesn't look like a number 1 pick. You're right. Yeah. He doesn't. None of these dudes do. No, I mean, to me, I have Alex Sarr number 1. I think he looks the most like a number 1 pick. That's just my preference and where I'm at. But as we get into this, we're going to start saying that's really good value there. Dalton Connect at 10, even, looking at the mock you have up here, Devin Carter at 11, Bub Carey, like these guys. I think where I like this draft is 10 to 20. So I know that's music to your ears, Trevor, because the team you cover is right in that pocket. I think that's where the talent meets the value and all of that. At the top, you're not going to get what looks like a number 1 pick or a I mean, if you want to go straight superstar or a guy that could be an Ron Holland is a name people should talk about more if that's what you're looking at. Now, I'm not saying that's what he's going to be, but he is a potential two-way wing that can get buckets and defend. It's just the floor falling out on that is pretty real also. It's just, like you said, Keith, it's not a Victor draft. It's not even a Cade Cunningham draft or somebody like that.
Yeah, I completely agree. This is a draft where someone will become an all-star out of the class. It happens every year. We just don't know who it is. Like, that's the hard. More people I've talked to, whether it be folks who are with teams evaluating this draft or folks who are doing it as part of the media, and no one has a great feel. Like, I've asked people, give me the one guy you think will be an all-star. I'm not kidding when I said I think I got about 15 different names because people are there. They're just all over it. Now, what I will say is, people are very passionate with this draft class for certain skill sets. It seems to be if you are lacking a movement shooter, if you are lacking rim protection, if you are lacking on-ball defense, you can get that out of certain guys in this draft class. That, to me, with the relative flatness of this, says we're going to see a lot of trade movement because teams are going to say, I want Devin Carter. I'm going to go up to get Devin Carter because I don't think he's going to be here 3 picks later when we pick or something like that. So this is going to be really, really big, on those kind of trades. I think we're going to see a lot of stuff like that kind of come into play here as the night goes along. I think we're going to have a lot of, that's an interesting pick, followed by that pick was made for Team X. And then it makes a lot more sense how it was done. I'm super excited for tonight because I think we're going to have stuff going all over the place. All right, let's throw our buddy, our purple and gold pal, a bone here. Who did you and Sam mock to the Lakers in your final mock last night?
I think we ended up going, this is what happens whenever, like you guys said, you record.
You guys have done a number of them.
We've done a number of them. And like I say, we got interrupted. So I'm trying to think who ended up falling there. Maybe somebody in the chat actually watched last night. And because I remember we talked about Collier with the rim pressure. We talked about some of the bigs. I feel like we ended up going Jared McCain, though, is who we ended up going.
That pick would make me throw up in my mouth a little bit because I like it so much.
Okay, I was like, you hate that much.
No, I love Jared McCain.
Jared McCain at 17, I feel like is a really good. I would love that spot
for the Lakers. Like that would be so good for them. Like gives them that point guard that they need. Because I think that's what he'll do. It's going to take him a little bit, but the good news is you still got LeBron. So LeBron's going to have the ball a lot anyway. So McCain can play off him, and everybody will know by the end of the night tonight. If you watch, I love guards that rebound. That's like my favorite thing in the world is guards
the rebound. Yep.
Get the ball. And Jared McCain is a pretty good rebounder for a small guard.
There's a few of them, right? I mean, you mentioned Devin Carter. That's absolutely something that Devin Carter does really well. And so there's a couple of guys like that.
KJ Simpson.
Yeah, KJ Simpson.
In the second round.
Yep. I'd have him solidly in my second round. So, and there's some wings that do as well. Baylor Shireman is a guy I've really liked. He's actually a guy that I've loved the idea of the Knicks taking with one of those two picks there in the 20s. What's interesting at the top is, a reason a lot of these guys aren't held in higher regard is actually the floor spacing. So if Alex Sarr, people really thought he could shoot, I think he'd be the number one pick. If people thought Klingon could shoot, same thing. Steph Castle, Modest Buzelis, Ron Holland, Cody Williams, even.
Like people thought Zach Edey could hit jumpers.
Oh, exactly.
He'd be the top 5 pick.
Yeah, and then the guys that can really space the floor, let's say a Reed Shepherd, a Dalton Connect, then there's real defensive concerns with Connect, and then size concerns with Reed Shepherd. And because of the size, it becomes a little bit of defensive concern. So I think this is going to be, you alluded to it, Keith, a very fit-dependent draft, because it is so flat. And my rule always with drafts is you can draft for fit if you're within a tier. Just don't break tiers for fit. Yes. That's when you end up missing on value. But these tiers are so wide, it's almost impossible to break a tier. You can find a fit within whatever tier and range you are in.
Yeah, exactly. Exactly. That's the issue with this draft.
Yeah, sorry, Trevor. I just was going to say there's a lot of people asking about Zach Edey, so let's get Bryce give your 1 minute Zach Edey pitch
Yeah.
here.
Yeah, I have Zach Edey at 20 on my board. I know some people have him higher. If he ends up going higher, I'm okay with that. I think we actually mocked him at 14 to the Blazers last night. I didn't quibble with it. I don't have major qualms with that. My thing with Edey is I almost see Edey as like a big time second unit 5-man. You bring him in and second units cannot deal with this dude. I'm not saying you run the offense through him, but he sets a ball screen and rolls and gets a switch. You throw it to him. Then he goes to that left shoulder, right hand hook. Great screener. I don't think people will say, well, why isn't he Donovan Clean? I don't think he moves as well as Clingan. People will point to the NBA combine. I don't subscribe to those as much. I try to trust my eyes. I try to trust the film in terms of that stuff. We've talked about, or not we, but I've talked about how like even Reed Shepherd cheated the vertical jump. He got a little bit of alligator arms when he was doing the standing reach, which increased his vertical jump numbers. I don't take a whole lot away from the combine stuff. I think that's the big thing with Edey. He's true drop coverage, massive, all of that. I think he'll be a really, really, really good second unit big man. Wherever the value is in this draft, then that's where a team should take him.
Do you buy the shooting that we saw at the combine from Edey?
Listen, this is like the most arrogant thing I will ever say. And I like hate myself for even saying it. I can go record a video of me looking like an NBA shooter right now in an empty gym with nobody around. I just don't buy into empty gym shootings. There's so much. And I was a low level average Division I basketball player and shooter. I shot like 35% in my career. And like, I have no business being anywhere near it. There's so much mental to it. Like all of those things, getting it off at a certain pace so the defense can't get there. I'm not saying Edey won't. I just get a little frustrated that we saw Brook Lopez do it. And now every big man that comes into the league is going to be able to do it. I think we get in trouble using outliers as the rule. And Brook Lopez's floor spacing is one of those. Jalen Brunson being a star at his size is one of those. Jokic, like those guys are outliers, not the rule. And I don't want to see guys overdrafted because we think that we're going to be able to make that happen and replicate it with everybody that comes along.
Yeah, turning guys into shooters is not an easy thing. And Brook Lopez did it literally 1 year to the next. He had taken, what did we say, Trevor, the other day? It was like 16 total three-pointers, and then he took like 300 the next season. But Brook Lopez was always a guy who had really nice touch out to like 15, 18 feet. I think Edey eventually could. The best comp I've heard for him that people have been giving is early career Jonas Valanciunas, where he's just bigger, but much bigger. Like Valanciunas.
Yo, he's a mountain.
Yeah, he's huge. He's 7'4", and he's every bit of, I don't know what he weighed in at the combine, but he's got to be 300 pounds or close.
Yeah, like 300.
Yeah, so he is just a massive dude. So I think I think he's gonna score in pick and roll. He's going to finish around the basket just fine in the NBA. I buy into that. He's the best screener in the class. Part of it is you better be if you're that big. But yeah, I'm there. I think he's fine. I think he'll play and be a productive player in the league, and I wouldn't be surprised if he's a starter. I think what the big thing with him is he can't go to a team that is like, we got to have you up at the level of the ball. It has to be a team who's going to say, we'll play in drop coverage. We'll build a scheme for you to your strengths when you're in the game. We may have a completely different scheme when another big is in the game, but scheme-dependent players now are more in vogue in the NBA than they ever were in the past, because it used to be, hey, if you can't do these things, you can't play. Now teams are like, we can use you different ways. We'll figure out a way to get you on the floor. I'm going to say this too. Bryce is being super modest, guys. Bryce played Division I college basketball, for those who don't know him. And I looked it up. He shot 37.5% for your career, including in his final season. He shot, first full season when you weren't hurt and injured, 37%.
So this people are going to go look at the real GM page. I did tear my ACL at the end of my junior year, actually right before we played in the NCAA tournament, and then I never recovered. So if you're like, man, why do you start this many games as junior year and then as senior? I played on a torn ACL my senior year. So
But did play Division I college basketball and had some good game. You could go look at the game log. He had some big games against
go look at the Maryland one if you want to. That's my claim to fame against.
Yeah, there it is.
People
and
always
that's
ask.
A rivalry game.
Yeah,
too.
we beat Maryland and Grievous Vasquez, and I hate saying that. It sounds so bad. It's not my nature to say it, but I think it gets the point across. There's people way better than me at shooting that aren't in the NBA as well. There's just something different about I played with a teammate who I think I could outshoot him just in an empty gym at practice. We do shooting competitions. He was second in the country or third in the country our junior year, I think only to Steph Curry in 3-pointers made, because he was just irrationally confident, and that's what it takes. And I wasn't. It was my biggest flaw, was the mental side of the game. And so that's why it's just a long stretch from empty gym 3-point shooting to think about it. He's going from Purdue even to the NBA. And one final thing, Brook Lopez shot 79% from the free throw line his sophomore year at Stanford. Zach Edey's best year was 73. So if you're a free throw shooting percentage indicator to the NBA, even that right there is a major difference between those two guys. And Donovan Clingan's is even lower than Zach Edey's whenever it comes to that.
Yeah, last thing I will say too on this, I watched for years. Dwight, sorry, the dogs are getting into something behind me here, if people can hear that. I watched Dwight Howard for years knock down 3-pointer after 3-pointer after 3-pointer in warm-ups and in practices and and then never took a real one in a game. So I just don't think that's NBA players, when they shoot the ball, that is the single biggest difference. They just don't miss when the lights aren't on. And I'm with Bryce. Maybe Edey gets there. We'll see. If it happens, it'll probably be a year 3, 4, 5, 6, 7 down the line kind of thing with that. But we will see.
E.G. on looked great against a chair. You never know. You never know. Alex Amberling said, hoping my Lakers take Messi at 17. He reminds me of Nick Claxton. Bryce, your thoughts on Yves Messi?
Yeah, that's what was interesting. When the Lakers came up in our mock, there was multiple bigs. There's Kyle Filipowski was still on the board. My guy, Deron Holmes, was still on the board. Edey was off already. Khalil Ware, I think, was also on the board. And what the Lakers would have if they want to go big, we've talked about this, Trevor, is though they would have different options in the type of the big. Filipowski really gets the dribble pass shoot as a 7-footer. I think Deron Holmes doesn't get enough dribble pass shoot love for what he can do. Deron Holmes is one of my guys, so obviously I'm going to say that. Messi is not that dribble pass shoot guy. He is a twitchy, athletic rim runner, rim gravity. Those type of things can really backpedal and drop coverage. And then Khalil Ware is a little bit of, you're taking a little bit of an upside swing. He has the athleticism, the body, the potential skill. There's been motor questions throughout his career. But if the Lakers want to go big, I think a lot of those guys will be on the board. And so it'd be what big, and Trevor, you probably answer this better, what big makes the most sense with this Lakers team? And that's what the Lakers would have to decide between those guys.
Yeah, they all bring different things to the table, and you can make cases for all of them. I mean, if you just want a lob threat, Messi makes a lot of sense. Hey, LeBron, you want a guy that you can just throw the ball up to and he's going to dunk it every time? Yeah, okay, Messi's a guy to go with, and he's an incredible athlete. I wish Khalil Ware didn't have the motor questions because his shot is so smooth, and I like what he can do. In fact, and speaking of that, Khalil Ware, do you buy that the motor concerns with him? Do you think that should be a reason why teams don't draft him?
Here's what I'll say. I scouted him when he was in high school, and I had it in my notes going back to the first time I watched him that I wasn't sure that he played as hard as what I would like. Here's the thing. He was 17, 18 years old. I know how I played when I was in high school compared to how I had to play whenever I grew up and became a young man and my coach held me accountable. I'm not saying his high school coach didn't hold him accountable, but it's just different. I've heard that through this process, he's answered a lot of those questions. And I think this is where the draft is really hard. There's a lot of things that makes the draft hard, guys. You're evaluating an 18-year-old versus a 23-year-old versus one that's at Weber State versus one that's playing in the Euro League versus one that's playing in the NBL. On top of it, we don't sit in on the interviews. I have no idea how Khalil Ware answered questions in interviews or when a team set him down and said, hey, why didn't you sprint back in this situation? Or why didn't you get this box out? I don't know what his answer was. And so those are the things. That's why these interviews are important, because if I was going to draft him, I would want to show him, hey, why didn't you box out these 3 times? And I would want to hear what the answer was. And I know I'm kind of picking on Ware. This is true of every single prospect in this class.
These are
you want to hear is winning everything.
Yeah. Yeah, true. Yeah. All right. We've almost done an hour here. We're all going to be live for multiple hours later. Bryce, last thing to close here. Just going to give it to you. Who are some of your players you like at the end of the first round, beginning part of the second round, and why is the number 1 guy on the list Oso Ighodaro?
Listen, he's one of my guys. I've talked about him. You and I have texted back and forth about Oso. Listen, Jalen Tyson is a guy I really like. I think he can come in. He's a little bit older, has an NBA-ready body, interesting skill set. I mentioned Baylor Shireman earlier. I like him a lot. Ryan Dunn is a very interesting name. I don't know what he does offensively, but he's insane defensively. Oso is a really interesting player. I'm sure you've talked about him on here, but can really hit the floater, can really pass, real versatile, more explosion than what people give him credit for. I talked about 10 to 20. I like that range. I don't love the back end of the second round, but this end of the first 10 picks of the second round on Thursday, and obviously, we'll talk through all of them. I'll be live for all of them, but I'm really interested in those first 10 because there's going to be some guys there. I don't know if Pakum Dadie ends up going in the first round. AJ Johnson is a guy out of the NBL that has real swing for the fences type of upside. Terrence Shannon Jr. is, now that he's resolved all of the other stuff, is a real talented basketball player that's a little bit older. Bobby Klintman is a guy I like. So there's you brought up KJ Simpson. I think KJ Simpson is in this conversation not at the end of the first, but maybe top of the second. So there's some guys here that I'm really interested in. And yes, your guy, Oso Ighodaro, can really play. And if he gets, 30 to 40, a team gets him there, I think that team should be excited about that.
I love that you said in this range of 10 picks and named like 15 guys, because that's what this draft is. Like, this draft is that's kind of how this whole thing's been going. All right, we'll close out with one for Trevor because it came in as a super chat.
Oh, it's so gross.
Checking in from the grave. So shout out there. I mean, that's impressive. Lakers need a point guard. They need a dog, a playmaker, a third star, a hometown hero. They should consider getting Westbrook as a free agent. And that is the sign. It is time to end the show.
Yes, we have jumped the shark. It's time to go. It's time to go. Let's. I'm gonna run away from that one. But it's gonna be a fun night. The draft kicks off 8:00 Eastern time. We will be live on the Front Office channel. Bryce, I know you're gonna be live with Sam Vicini doing your breakdown as well. This is gonna be a lot of fun. It's draft night. Let's go. I'm excited. I'm excited for the NBA draft. I hope everybody is as well. And I'll tell you what, guys, my last point, I think the Nets and the Knicks pulling that big trade they did last night, it generates a lot of buzz and it adds a little bit more to a draft class that a lot of people see as kind of unexciting when we talk about no true stars at the top. So I wonder if the Nets and the Knicks pulling off a big trade already, if that kind of sets the mood and draws more eyeballs towards the draft with people feeling like, some big stuff could be going down, even if it's not in the draft picks, if it's on the trade front. So I'm excited for tonight, and I think that move from last night only adds even more buzz to what should be a really, really fun night tonight.
I was just going to plug the basketball bulletin. I just want to plug real quick. Yes. I compiled all of the scouts I'd put out into one document, post, whatever you call it, over on Substack. So the basketball bulletin, these guys have been gracious enough to allow me to participate in that. I thank them so much for that. And so you can click on that document and get to any player just by clicking on their name. So I just wanted to shout that out real quick. When your team drafts somebody tonight, I think there's almost 45 scouts on there. Obviously, I've scouted all of these guys, but only publicly released these. Go over there. You'll find most of the top 45 players that get drafted over the next 2 days.
Yeah, this is perfect. Check out Bryce and Sam tonight on Game Theory if you're looking for the in-depth, super deep draft stuff there. If you're looking for more of the, there was a trade, there was a rumor, here's what's going on with this stuff, we'll be live on Front Office Show. Trevor and I will be joined by Sean Davis. Here, Sean is super deep into this class too. He's been talking a lot about a lot of different guys in this class. We'll be live tonight, 8:00. Everything gets started, so we'll get started with the start of the draft. So if you're looking for breakdowns all over the internet, you can find it. Subscribe here to Front Office Show. Turn on your notifications. That's the best way to know once we go live.
All right, everybody. Thank you for joining us. Till next time. See ya and stay safe.